Hello and welcome to this second edition of the Daily Planet today. One of the most important messages on the first day yesterday was sent by a group of a dozen students who took to the stage to deliver a forceful reminder of what people at this conference are discussing will directly affect their lives, and they want the scientists here to get it right. I'll be meeting them. And a new 10-year research programme called Future Earth is launched here at Planet Under Pressure today. Its aim, nothing less than to transform sustainability research globally. Hello there, and in this programme we take a look at a number of the key solutions for a more sustainable planet. We look at how we can decarbonise the global economy, probably the biggest overarching challenge the world faces. We hear how it's possible to put a value on ecosystems and use that value to put policies into place that are sustainable, with an example from South Africa. And we discuss the crucial role of business and how an alliance between science and business might change the world, something that's being explored here at the conference in a very innovative way. But first, that new Future Earth initiative that's being launched here today will pull together a wide range of research projects into sustainability and the institutions and organisations behind them to create a body of work focused on solutions. Future Earth will bring together the natural and social sciences and the humanities to develop new and innovative responses to the global challenges ahead. In a word, it's all about new ways of stewardship, ways of looking after the planet. And that was the theme of a keynote talk this morning from Professor Georgina Mace of London's Imperial College. And she's with me now. Georgina, stewardship is looking after the planet. I guess what you were saying this morning was that the problem is we do it, but we do it in a very, very piecemeal way, and that doesn't work.
Yeah, so we've been very successful at managing landscapes for to meet our own needs. You know, we've successfully fed the world through a period of rapid population growth. We've managed to maintain landscapes for fresh water and energy production and so on. But those systems are under huge pressure now. Partly because there are many more people putting many more demands on them, and partly because the environment is changing, climate change and other ongoing processes to do with urbanisation, population growth and so on. So I think business as usual, to coin a phrase, is not an option here. We will need to do more things on the same landscape simultaneously to meet all those needs. And that's going to be particularly important if we're going to keep some intact natural habitats and some of the biodiversity, you know, that the Earth is absolutely remarkable for, is the variety of life. So this stewardship is not just about us, it's about the rest of life on Earth as well.
So how might it work? How might this more integrated approach work?
So, I mean, that's, you know, an area of really active interest, and one where perhaps the policies are almost outstripping the science. So some of these things will come up locally, where there are incentives to landowners to not only do food production, but to do carbon sequestration and to do wildlife conservation on agricultural landscapes. And some of those incentives are already in place. Then there are these sort of bigger scale processes, like the RED discussions around climate change, which would allow investment to go into tropical forests for carbon management, but if RED Plus or RED++ comes in, there are side benefits for biodiversity and other ecosystem services. So these things have arisen up. What planetary stewardship would involve is looking to make sure that among those, they actually provide a coherent solution to problems locally, regionally and globally.
What can science contribute? I guess it's got to be ways of measuring what's going on, which is kind of one of the difficulties at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, here in the UK, you've been involved in the UK ecosystem assessment programme, which is an attempt to try and do some of this measurement. How is that working out? What sort of things are coming out of that?
So that was a really interesting process, we tried to find metrics to reflect all these different benefits that people get from the environment. So not only the economic values of food production, but also to reflect the health benefits of a green environment or a pollution-free environment, and then to reflect this thing that's much less easy to measure, which we called shared social values, the things that we just want to be there even though we can't actually measure their benefits. And we made, in the last assessment, which reported last year, some estimates of economic costs and benefits of different land management scenarios, taking into account that wider range of things. And it's clear that we can do this. We haven't yet worked out how to do all these health benefits. We certainly haven't got a good way of doing the shared social values, but it's becoming a very constructive discussion.
So very briefly, it influences government policy, it has impact in that direction, and you create a stewardship through government policy.
I mean, it was a project for DEFRA, so it started off with the environment. It now has cross-government buy-in. The Treasury are interested in it because of their natural capital project, and the two clearly move into one another. If we can get these metrics right, we have a way of measuring natural capital, not just financial capital, and that is a pathway to better management in the future. So it's a project in progress.
Great, interesting stuff. Georgina Mace, thank you very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Planet.
Thank you.
Now, here's a show-stopping thought. World energy demand is expected to double by 2050. Now, that's a hell of a lot of kilowatts or megajoules. Now, whatever the units, it has to come from somewhere, and fossil fuels, as we all know, are the easiest option. But they're also, of course, the most dangerous for the climate. So, we need to decarbonize the global economy, and pretty fast too. How to do that? Well, there's no one better to ask than Dr. Shohbakar Dhakal, who heads the Global Carbon Project. He's speaking at the conference, and he's with me now. Hi there. Decarbonisation. I mean, it's a massive, massive challenge. People have said how much we need to do. Do we have any chance of doing it?
Definitely we have a chance of doing it, because for the simple reason that we have to do it. And there are a lot of prospects for us to move forward, especially I can tell you from the city's perspective. Cities are the place where, urban areas in particular, huge amount of...
Yeah, because we often think about decarbonisation as being power stations, electricity generation, transport fuels, but cities have a huge carbon footprint, don't they?
Indeed, indeed. Cities emit CO2 emissions directly. At the same time, cities has huge, we call it embedded CO2 emissions in all its goods and services, which goes right upstream in the chain of the supply chain. So we have a huge prospect from cities. Cities can look at the consumption behavior as a way to mitigate CO2 emission. It's more responsibility debate how much city can achieve. At the same time, within cities, there are so many efforts that is possible to mitigate CO2 emission.
So how do you decarbonise a city? Is it you change the way people behave in the city, or do you have to kind of rebuild the city from fresh, knock it down and start again, or can you do things to the infrastructure, to the built buildings of a city to make them reduce their carbon footprint?
It's actually a mix of a whole lot of things. We can't fully depend on only one component. We have to make city space correct, cities urban form correct, urban design correct. At the same time, even if cities, all the speciality of cities correct, still we have a lot of activities coming in. We have to look for a very high efficient public transport. We are looking for energy efficient buildings. We are looking for good technologies. We are looking for energy saving. We are looking for best utilization of the waste recycling. And there is a whole lot of things that we can actually do in cities. And we have a lot of good experiences coming out from different cities either.
Do we have the tools that we need already to do it, the sort of technologies you're talking about? Do they exist already, or do we have to sort of kind of keep our fingers crossed and hope that new technologies will emerge?
Definitely we need new technology, there is no doubt, but at the same time, whatever technology we have, is still, if we can diffuse the technology, if we can use the technology, still we can achieve a lot. But at the same time, technological solutions are necessary. which is absolutely necessary but not sufficient. We have to address behavior issues, and we have to address some of the systemic issues where we have much more opportunities to reduce CO2 emissions. You
said there were some examples of cities who are beginning to do this. What sort of examples can you give?
Well, there are a lot of cities which has excelled a different kind of sectoral approach or even systemic level. See, I can give you an example of Tokyo, for example, City of Tokyo. City of Tokyo has one of the most innovative carbon cap and trade system ever implemented in city. It's the first city in the world where we have a cap and trade system for CO2 emissions within the commercial buildings. And it's one of the most exciting program. Similarly, we have seen very good public transport systems, such as go to Curitiba in Brazil, a wonderful bus rapid transit system. We have seen a lot of actions on the renewable energy front in many cities. We have seen a lot of waste management and the greenhouse gas mitigation effort in many cities. A lot of building energy efficiency programs. City of Masdar, let's say
the new one in the Gulf,
Middle East. City of Masdar is aiming to be a zero carbon city. Of course, there are a lot of consumption and embedded emission CO2 issue is there, but also it's a very good model. At least this gives us momentum, and it gives us some kind of positive feeling that we can do it.
And in a word, because we're running a little bit short of time, then you step right back and look about decarbonising the entire global economy in a relatively short space of time. Are you an optimist or a pessimist? Do you think we'll make it?
I'm optimist. I'm optimist for a very simple reason that we have to do it, and if we are really serious, we can do it. Absolutely.
Great. Thanks very much indeed for coming to the Daily Planet. Now, we often talk about how we need to look after the planet so our children can inherit a place that's fit to live in. So it is essential to hear from young people, to hear what they want from the older generation that are running things right now. This conference heard that loud and clear on the opening day yesterday with a presentation from a dozen or so students. I went to meet them, and they were very, very clear that they're not impressed by what they're set to inherit at the moment. Well, one of the highlights of the opening of the conference yesterday was an appearance by a dozen young people on the stage with a very key and passionate message to all the scientists here. It was called The Youth Voice of Planet Under Pressure. And I think, half a dozen of the dozen young people who were on stage are with me now. Welcome, everybody. And tell me, first of all, why did you all do it? Do you feel particularly passionate about the environment, about the potential problems that the Earth faces in the future?
Yes, I think it's very important that young people get involved, because they will inherit the mess that the older generations have left behind. So.
Yeah, we've not done very well, have we? No, I mean, do you blame us for what we've done? I mean, us older people like us, do you blame us for what we've done?
I can't say that I blame you specifically. I think it's a collaboration of everyone's efforts, and it's just a way in which we can improve them. I think that's the most important thing that we can take from this.
Do you think that you're alone, that you're like lone voices, or is the feelings you have about needing a sustainable future common amongst a lot of young people and people you talk to, your friends?
I think that it matters to the majority of young people, definitely, because it's our future and we want to have a good future.
But then people also want cars, and they want all the other things of a big, developed, rich world future. Do you think young people, as they grow up, will be prepared to make the sacrifices, make the changes needed to be able to live sustainably?
I think it'll be very hard for people to give up things, because obviously everybody wants a car and PlayStation, but we just have to find the balance between having modern technology as well as like reusing energy and saving, instead of just, like, for example, leaving lights on and stuff like that. We should just learn to turn them off.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to talk to scientists here at all?
We have. Just to add to the last point, I think it should be more of a conversion to sustainable energies and stuff, rather than us having to make sacrifices per se. I don't think we should have to cut out all these radical things from our lifestyles, but I think we should convert them to something that's more environmentally friendly, like buses which are powered by biofuel and so on.
Yeah, it's quite easy, isn't it, to kind of have a hair shirt sort of future. It doesn't have to be like that, does it?
Well, we made that point in our speech. We want to still be able to drive a car when we're older, take holidays, but like we said in the speech, the sort of quote, we want to do it knowing that it's completely sustainable and we're having a minimal impact on the environment.
Do you all think that's possible? That it's not having your cake and eating it, but it is living in a different way, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think that with science changing every day, I think that there's a possibility that eventually we can live a lot more sustainably.
Now this conference here is feeding into the Rio Plus 20 conference in June in Rio de Janeiro. I went to that conference 20 years ago and reported from it. What message do you guys want to send to the people, the politicians, the governments who are going to be at Rio Plus 20?
I think that we want to say that take action now, because in the future we won't have that chance, because the world's getting worse and we need to make difference, we need to make positive changes, and because it's our future and it really matters to us.
Great. Now one thing that you did do as well as part of this work was a survey, wasn't it? What did the survey tell you? What were the key findings from your survey?
There are a lot of people interested in the environment. Yes, there's 12 of us here speaking and sort of like telling everyone what we feel, but at the end of the day we surveyed 110 people and more than half of them were actually interested in the issues that we were raising here, so it's not just us.
It was just an awareness issue there, because again, like, we had the interest, but then I think only just over 20% actually knew of a company that provided renewable energy. So again, it's like we said in our speech, we want a better communication between the people who've got this knowledge and then people like us who just live normal everyday day lives. We want to know what's out there, what we can do to make sure that we sustain what we've got and we live sort of in harmony with the environment.
Now, we talked in the earlier edition today of the Daily Planet about green economics, and one thing that was raised was the difficulty of putting a value on things that don't have a monetary price. Central to that problem is the idea of ecosystem services. So how do you capture, for example, the huge value to the planet system of a forest that's left standing when in cash terms it's worth nothing until it's chopped down for timber? It's an age-old problem. Well, Dr. Belinda Reyers is a conservation biologist who's got first-hand experience of putting the idea of ecosystem services into practice in her work in South Africa, where she heads the Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services Research Group at CSIR in Stellenbosch. And she's with me now. Belinda, we know what valuing ecosystem services is about. We know we can do it, but is it actually possible to put it into practice? You've been able to do it, haven't you? In what way?
Well, I think one needs to distinguish between what valuation is attempting to achieve. It's, it goes beyond just putting a dollar, or in the case of South Africa, a rand value on an ecosystem service, and tries to make people aware of the relevance and importance of these services to themselves and to society in general. But, making people aware is only really one part of the problem. And what we're trying to do in South Africa is going beyond that, to working with partners to actually design and implement management schemes to fix ecosystem services, to enhance them for the future, and to really build them into a lot of policies, from conservation all the way through to agriculture and even poverty alleviation policy.
That's the ambition. What have you actually done on the ground? How has that turned out in practice on the ground?
So it's early days yet, but we've got a very exciting project. We've been working in the Southern Cape of South Africa, an area that's already experiencing an increase in extreme events like flood and fire, and coastal storm surges, which cause coastal erosion, and an area where many people feel very disempowered about what they can do about these things. And we're showing them that actually the way they manage the landscape and the ecosystems can actually halve the risk that they face from these extreme events. So, example, for flood, we're showing them that clear felling practices up in the catchments as well as wetland restoration can make a total difference to the amount of properties lost during a flood and the amount of lives lost too. And this is work with the insurance sector, but now engaging more broadly with the disaster management sector in identifying and restoring important systems like 4 dunes, which play a key role in preventing coastal erosion, but which have just been stabilized or lost during urban development. So those are the kinds of practices we're putting into place with land use planners, and then also with the disaster management agencies in those areas in terms of proactive planning for these extreme events.
So the valuing is almost like an insurance thing. You say you're working with the insurance industry. The value comes by being able to work out, using, if you like, insurance actuarial sort of ways of doing things. What would happen if you lost something?
Well, we haven't even had to do that in the case of the insurance industry. Their losses are extreme in the past 5 years in this part of the world. And they came to us and said, what can we do? We can't stop insuring people. It's bad for business. Is there something you can help us with? And we could bring in the kind of work we're doing to show them how they could reduce their risks, identify their risks more clearly, and avoid the kind of costs that they're seeing. So in a way, the valuation's being done by actuaries for us. We're not having to do it, but we're having to show them what the solutions look like on the ground, which is really where, you know, your knowledge as an ecologist, as a landscape person, you can really be very powerful. And working with other partners who work in those landscapes, like the conservation agencies and the restoration groups too.
And how does that translate to the world as a whole? Are there lessons beginning to be learned already from what you've been able to do in South Africa?
Well, I think so. You're seeing this emerging area of ecosystem-based adaptation coming out in climate change negotiations, the idea that we can use our ecosystems to buffer us from the extreme events and other effects. So this is giving it some concrete and saying, here's an example, it's not just pie in the sky. We're also seeing it being taken up into the kinds of green job schemes that we've seen around restoring ecosystem services, creating livelihoods and creating new economies even in some of these schemes, feeding into green economy strategies and policies as well, and making them more tangible too, rather than just theory around what a green economy could look like.
Fascinating stuff. Dr. Belinda Reyers, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Now, if you go round the Planet Under Pressure conference here, you'll see signs to the World Cafe. Now, it's not just a place for coffee, though that's important. I, for example, can't function in the morning without my double espresso. It's also an exciting and innovative place that's been set up to come up with new ideas, where everyone can participate, based upon the idea that the most powerful ideas actually just often emerge over a passionate chat over coffee. Tomorrow, the World Cafe will turn its collective caffeine-fueled mind to how science and business can work together to create a more sustainable world. I'm joined now by the chairs of that session, Katherine Richardson from the University of Copenhagen and Dirk, the editor-in-chief of CR magazine that covers corporate responsibility. Welcome to both of you. What can science and business do together, Katherine?
Well, science and business are both two very important players on the field if we're going to achieve sustainability. You can't do it without either one of them. Business has to be the locomotive that brings us in place with the help of market mechanisms. And of course there's no such thing as a free market, so we need politicians to set the framework for the market. Business has to be the locomotive, and science has to tell us where we want to go and where we have to go.
Dirk, I guess part of the problem at the moment is that some of this is going on under the banner of corporate responsibility, but it's fragmented, it's happening in individual businesses and so on. Does it need to come together in a more integrated sort of way?
I think so. One of the ways that it does, at least in our estimation, is via transparency, which is the floor, if you will, rather than the ceiling of performance. And despite my concurrence with Katherine's articulation of the issues at hand, the fact of the matter is that at least in the States, which is where Corporate Responsibility magazine is based, that statement of hers that there's no such thing as a free market would be enormously controversial in some quarters. Many see the market as an a priori dynamic that existed prior to governance.
To the point that it would prevent the sort of things happening that you would like to happen?
Well, just so, because they hold out an almost ideological fervency on the free market front that would prevent a more wide-ranging conversation that would allow the empirical insights of the sciences to interfere with their belief system.
I guess one of the things you want from the World Cafe tomorrow is for people to come up with ideas to break that barrier.
Well, yes, but I think what's important as well is the fact that now Dirk's starting point is the United States. My starting point is Northern Europe, and things are very, very different in Northern Europe. And my own country has actually legally said we are going to be independent of fossil fuels by 2050 and is changing the market framework in order to be able to make it pay to do so. And learning best practice and what other people are doing, I think, is important in getting these two really important parties together on this agenda.
How essential is it that they actually get together, Dirk?
I think it's incredibly important, but the first thing that needs to happen is for a dialogue or a conversation to be initiated, which will happen actually this afternoon, not tomorrow. At least I hope so, unless I didn't have my double espresso this morning. But
maybe I had too many.
Right. But the notion is that it's kind of a difficult conversation to have at times, because the scientific method and the different silos within the sciences have completely different taxonomies from one another, much less from the business world. And likewise in business, you have big box retailers on the one hand, extractive industries on the other. How do they talk to one another? And that's why, for us, transparency is the sine qua non of of reaching responsibility, because until you get that, you can't have that conversation.
And on the other hand, I think scientists have the habit of thinking, well, if we just tell them what we think they need to know, then everything is going to be fine. And in fact, when you build bridges, the best bridges, the successful bridges have traffic in two directions. So we need to have the dialogue to be able to deliver the evidence in a package that can be used.
What form might those bridges take?
Well, first and foremost, it's important to remember that I believe it was Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan who said that his opponents were entitled to their own opinions but not their own facts. So it is completely useful for the business community to first hear from the scientific community about what the consensus or consensuses are regarding some of these issues. So just to have this conversation, which we're going to do this afternoon for the better part of a couple hours, to get to the point where we can reach an agreement about how we're going to talk about a free market in a way that might be useful to the corporate boardroom so that they don't feel, frankly, threatened. That would be a starting point.
Well, let's hope the World Cafe goes well this afternoon. You do get those good ideas. I wish you all the best of luck. Katherine Richardson and Dirk Olin, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Right, well, that's it from the Daily Planet for today. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock London time with yet another packed programme, including a couple of amazing films and from the Green Screen Climate Fix Flicks competition. I actually managed to say that. I promise you, they are stunning. Until tomorrow, goodbye.